Hey, Michael. Yes, we can hear you. All good.
Great.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I didn't realize the space had already started. It still says set reminder on my screen, but yeah, glad to be here.
No worries, no worries.
Hello.
Yeah, it's not the most perfect of products, I would say. It's quite buggy, the spaces. Yeah,
Uh,
UI.
oh, yeah.
Hello, Michael. Thanks for joining.
All right. Hi, everyone.
All right, so yeah, I want to welcome everyone to the latest episode of Polka Chats. This week we have Hummingbot with us. In the previous three episodes, we focused on parachain token projects who are listing their token on Orderbook, like A-Star, Interlay, Fala. You've heard those episodes. If you haven't, they're recorded, so you can go back and listen to them. Today's episode is a little different. We want to give a warm welcome, a warm Polkadex and Polkadot welcome to Hummingbot. And in case you missed it, this week we announced that Polkadex Orderbook has integrated Hummingbot via an open source API connector that allows traders on Polkadex to automate their trades and also design and implement their own trading strategies. So yeah, we're excited to have Michael Feng with us today. He's the co-founder of Hummingbot. Hey, Michael.
Hey, everyone. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. On the Pokedex side, we have myself, Pablo, but we also have Vivek, who's our executive director and co-founder. Hey, Vivek.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, Michael, thank you so much for joining. And I know you're a very busy person, so just we want to make it as informative as possible for the listeners. So you are the perfect person to speak about the state of how trading is in crypto right now. So thank you so
Yeah,
much for joining. Yeah.
no problem at all. Glad to be here. And to me, actually, I think one of the things I really look forward to is trying to explain, yeah, how Humming works and also how we can help exchanges and the traders out there.
Well, I think you might be the best person to do that. So yeah, we're excited to have you here. Okay, so Mike, do you want to get us started? Talking a little bit about yourself, short intro to Hummingbot, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Yeah, of course. So I was actually born in China, and then I came to the U.S. as a kid, and so I guess I had the privilege of like being able to go to like an Ivy League school in the U.S. But because my parents, they were very fortunate even to go to the U.S. because they were in the Cultural Revolution in China, and it was just because they happened to go to one of the best universities that they one of the very few people who were able to leave China in the early 1980s that I kind of had the opportunities I did. So to me, I think I've always wanted to try to like create technology and create products that would kind of give back to people like me as a kid. People who were born in countries that were not in the U.S. and who kind of like didn't kind of have the advantages that people in the first world kind of did. So that's what I think for me. Even though I worked in finance for about 10 years, I was involved with the creation of these products called CDOs, or collateralized debt obligations. And so I guess my claim to infamy is that I built the model that was used to structure the first subprime mortgage-backed CDO back in 2002. And my models were used for a lot of deals done by both Citigroup and JP Morgan in the subsequent 7 years. So I don't know if you've heard of like these like famous Bear Stearns hedge funds that blew up, and lots of stuff that blew up were built using my models. So after that experience, this was about 2010. I had done pretty well financially through all this. I was like in some like luxury apartment in Hong Kong, and I still remember thinking to myself, I was like, what? Why don't I like, what was the whole point of life? Because I made all this money, but at the end of the day, all I've done is caused a lot of like damage. I've caused a lot of people their homes, their jobs, and so for me, I was like, I got to get out of this industry. And so that's why I decided to just come back to the US. I ended up getting an engineering degree from Stanford. And then I was going to just leave finance behind and do something totally different and create like totally different things. And basically, so my first product, it was like a startup that extracted data from PDF files. Because that was I spent a lot of time. I was an early trader, like extracting tables from PDFs and putting them into Excel. So we created a product that used AI to basically extract tables and PDFs using the same like visual heuristics AI uses. And so we built a tool called DocMunch that does that. There's just some demo videos out there for it. But overall, the tool, I would say, didn't work as well. So I kind of know now like how to build AI tools from having failed at it the first time. But the tool just didn't work very well, honestly. It kind of worked like 80% of the time. But the 20% it failed, it was useless. So that's why we ended up selling the company to a company called Nitro. That was a player in the PDF software space. They still operate today. They offer a great competitive product to Adobe Acrobat. But I became head of product at Nitro, and then kind of learned what it's like to really lead a team and build like a little, like basically try to work on basically what working in a startup is really like a larger startup. And so in 2017, I came out and I kind of started a new company with a couple of friends called Coin Alpha. And the idea there was to really take the blockchain and try to innovate fund management. So we built an early on-chain hedge fund, and then that kind of cut the attention of the SEC because we did on-chain hedge fund and they shut us down. So basically, long story short, I'm sorry I did this whole big preamble, but this is kind of like, I would say this would really explain why we open source Hummingbot in the first place, which was we felt like we were trying to create something that would actually democratize finance by making it easier for people to start hedge funds. But instead, the SEC thought that it would like basically allow too many retail people to start hedge funds, so they shut us down. And so, but our hedge fund actually did pretty well. Our hedge fund made 23% in a year where Bitcoin and Ethereum were down 9%. This is 2018, and it was because our model was good, but we also had this engine that would automatically process basically do everything based on some signals that based on machine learning model that my co-founder built. So the actual engine itself was also pretty valuable, and we found that a lot of people out there who were algo traders, who were market makers, they also needed to build the same engines. And so we felt that if we had basically gave away that engine, make it open source, other people could actually use it too. And turn out at the same time, because market making was kind of starting to be a thing, there were lots of tokens who needed liquidity. A lot of tokens were really pretty desperate for anyone who could provide market making. And so the fact that there was a tool out there that people could use to pretty easily build a market making bot, that's kind of like what actually drove the adoption of the product overall. But so for us, it was kind of like I would say the journey was my journey's been very weird because I think I've always wanted to create something that was like very much revolutionary, like really democratizing. And I didn't realize that until I would say for the past few years, because I think for a long time, especially after my stint in finance, I was just like in the wilderness looking for something that would like give meaning to my life, as opposed to this like very like money chasing type of like journey I was on earlier. So that's why I think for me, I've kind of come full circle where now I kind of realize that, okay, now I've kind of found my calling in life, which is just building this technology, and we can make it sustainable, then that's great. So yeah, so that was a long-winded answer, but I hope that was informative.
No, that was awesome. That was really awesome to get that insight and see the journey that you've been on. I mean, it's also interesting to hear that what seems like, like what started Hummingbot was really you trying to solve problems for yourself internally at Coin Alpha, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I would say that and this is one of the first realizations we made was that it takes a lot of time to properly build an exchange integration. However, that's work that really only has to be done once, because I remember when we first started trading 2017, we were like, we got the model ready, let's start deploying it. And then my CTO was like, no, we have to make sure this integration works properly, because at night we're all sleeping. like if there's a bug and it starts trading randomly, it's gonna lose all our money if there's a bug, right? So he was like, no, we need to spend another month and really debug this WebSocket integration to a point where it's like completely rock solid. It's gonna survive if the network fails and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, like we have to raise capital. You need to show some results like right away. But he eventually convinced me that we needed to put that engineering time to make it rock solid. And so, but after we built the Coinbase connector, then we built this like radar relay connector to a decentralized exchange. We realized that like, yeah, we could just offload that engineering work into an open source project. That would make it easier for everyone.
And so you started open sourcing Hummingbot in 2018.
That was when we were running a hedge fund.
Okay.
So that was when we encountered the problem of integrating into different cryptocurrency exchanges. We open sourced Hummingbot in April 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was also because Radar Relay gave us a grant. So this is 0x. They also gave us a grant to open source Hummingbot, and the reason was because Radar Relay, just like many DEXes, need liquidity, but it was very hard for people to actually integrate Radar Relay. However, we created we had integration to Binance, and then we created a strategy called cross-exchange market making that would allow people to basically run a bot and provide liquidity to Radar Relay while hedging on Binance, and they could basically earn that spread in between.
That's awesome. And so this is 2019. Did you have DeFi in mind when you were open sourcing Hummingbot, or because it was right before kind of the DeFi summer?
It was, yeah. So it was because even our first hedge fund, like this hedge fund we had built, was basically all operated using an Ethereum smart contract. So we were basically DeFi from the get-go. But I think in terms of the need, like I've always been a very product-focused person. So when I think the needs, it's not so much like DeFi versus CeFi. It's like, how do I help new exchanges who need liquidity and where it's hard for market makers to actually onboard onto the exchange, connect with users who have that capability, but just need some technology, need some tool to access that exchange. So it's like whether it's DeFi or CeFi, I feel like that problem space is actually very similar, but it exists more in DeFi because the exchanges coming out now who actually need that liquidity tend to be the DEXes.
Yeah, that's why we're here. Okay, so I want to bring Vivek in as well. I think both of you guys have come from technical backgrounds and have a lot of experience in finance itself. So how has, you spoke a little bit about that already, Mike, but how has this experience with trading kind of helped or shaped the products that you've built? Yeah, both of you.
Happy to take a first crack at it and let build on it. But for me, I think because I spent like a lot of time in finance before, I see that the one big innovation between kind of like crypto and non-TradFi is that in crypto we have what I call direct market access, where every exchange, because of competitive pressure and because of just the nature of the space, has offered open APIs for free for both data and execution, from the get-go. However, in TradFi, due to regulations and also because of tradition, pretty much all exchanges only limit access to the order books to these vetted market makers, and normal people like you and me, don't have the same level of access that the large players do. So I would say, and and what that means is that's what kind of allows Hummingbot to exist. Because if we don't integrate to any exchange where it's like CME, for example, in theory we could integrate to CME, but CME, they don't have integrations that are open to everyone. So it's like, why would we integrate to some closed source product that only a small subset of users can use? Instead, it's better for everyone if we just focus on integrations on exchanges that offer full direct market access, which tend to be only the crypto exchanges.
Makes sense.
Yeah, just to add a little bit there. First of all, Mike, we're really humbled to have you here, and to look at your experience of trading and the whole story of how you started building on Hummingbot. Um, for me, I think you know it's kind of a similar journey, but I was no way a professional trader or someone who got into this space, purely out of my professional work, right? So I was got into a bit, was kind of fortunate to get into the whole space 10 years ago. I was actually forced to try out the trading tools simply to learn the whole ecosystem, right? Because even from at that time, trading, because price discovery was the primary activity in the crypto space, right? So if you wanted to have any sort of exposure in the space, you really need to know how to trade these systems, acquire these systems, sell it, and buy and sell it. So it was a very amateurish journey for me when I started off. I think those days the trading bots were really primitive, but then there was the same excitement like what Mike just mentioned, of getting access to these tools which are generally not allowed to general retail public, right? So I started off with Gunbot, to be honest, because Gunbot used to offer their bots for a 1 BTC. I still remember on on Bitcoin Talk. So they used to charge 1 BTC for accessing their license. And yes, that used to be the times back then. And I used to be really bad at trading, to be honest. So I really put myself into educating. I started reading different trading books which are available, but in India, they were mostly about the stock market trading. But at least I at least got an idea of what are the algorithms that could be used for trying out different. Initially, I did strike a few jackpots. But then again, I soon realized it was a game of probability, and I started losing money very quickly. And tried several bots along the way. Like I've tried even from Crypto Hopper when they started long time ago, and then I've tried other stuff like even Signally was when they were doing really well. But it's really fortunate. I think in one way the industry is really fortunate to have professionals like Mike coming into the space and trying to add value, because this is something I noticed. Even what intrigued me and what interests me still now, more than the money, is that this when I started trading, there was an entire risk of deploying your capital on centralized exchanges, and trying to, even if it was a limited capital, you still had this risk. So uh, there was that problem of DEXes which are trying to solve the custody issues, so which naturally drove me into going full time into solving these things eventually. So it's really interesting, the how things evolved. And what you're doing is great work, Mike, by the way. You are empowering people, and even at Polkadex side, we are kind of trying to do the same thing, to be able to make actual algorithmic trading accessible to regular users without having to go through any sort of centralized institutions, which eventually may try to strangle you at some point, because they are run by, they are profit oriented companies. So at some point, they are going to put these locks in place. So we wanted to expose that to regular traders. Yep. So
Yeah, likewise. Yeah,
thanks.
and that's kind of why we're open source. The idea is that the software is forkable, so it will never be shut down. Is the idea.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
I wanted to ask you guys both to describe your ideal crypto exchange. And yeah, I mean ideal, like doesn't have to be that realistic for now, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I think we're always trying to, I think the whole journey of anything that you do, right, is to create that ideal space for you, right? Any product
Mm-hmm.
you work on. So definitely, I think crypto exchanges need to improve a lot. There are a lot of problems that we have in the space right now, especially with the, the custody issues and sovereignty issues and how much of the user data is actually being utilized. So I think if you ask me, the perfect exchange would be a Binance with no custody is what we are trying to get trying to get to. But it has a lot of ifs. If you ask me, like whether how it will fit into the larger society in terms of regulations, but yes, this is what we are trying to do, anyways. Yeah. I'll leave it to Mike. Like if he has any ideas.
So it's actually hard for me to answer the question because I think exchanges serve like different purposes for different people, and so it's like you get different ideas. So for example, like I think like one way to think about it, on a spectrum of exchanges, one end is like really good for like new traders, for like newly launched issuers. Like it's almost like this is where things go to launch and people go to trade the things at launch. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you may have like really big exchanges that only trade the top pairs and only cater to like institutions, because they something like that. So I think it's actually quite hard to find like one exchange that's ideal for everyone. And I have one thesis, which is like the word exchange is gonna become like mean a lot more things over time. Just like I think the word wallet is gonna expand as the types of wallets and what people use with them do. So I feel like we're actually in the. It's sort of like I remember 20 years ago, the word phone also meant something very different, but now it's like it's sort of phone. So I think something like that will happen with the word exchange over the next 10, 20 years.
Interesting. Yeah, that's kind of what my next question is. I mean, feeds into it a little bit. Is okay. You described a little bit ideal. What do you think exchanges will actually look like? Say 5, 10 years from now. Are CEXes in the lead right now? Is the line between CEX and DEX getting blurrier? Is there any convergence, or are we kind of going polar opposites? Like what do you think is happening?
Oh, right. So maybe I can take on this. So I view this as like there's two main fundamental needs that crypto serves. One need is the need for people in the developing world to take their money and move it into something more stable and more decentralized and more trustworthy. And so that's what kind of fuels the supply side of crypto. So that's why all the money, it's like from people in, Africa, China, Russia, like ordinary people like you and me who are like, we don't want to hold our local currency anymore because it's unstable, it's hyperinflationary, the government take it away. And the need is I just want to put my money somewhere I can safe and that's liquid and that's, that I control. And that happens to be Tether today, right? So it's like there's all this move from local fiat currency into Tether, and that's what the move flow into the system. Then the rest of us in the other parts of the world who don't have this problem are like, hey, now that this money is decentralized, all these things you can create with it. There's all these like kind of like assets. So it's almost like the creation of this like, alternate financial system that's sitting outside the traditional financial system, but it's really fueled by these twin forces of developing world people moving the money into the system, and then developed world people then figure out how to like manipulate and do things with the assets that are now sitting in this current system. So the exchange landscape to me is serving both needs, but in different ways. So you have the central exchanges, which are really the onboarding rails for this ecosystem that allows people in various countries, a lot of which are very local restrictions that only allow people to trade to enter. So like that's why there's all these fragmented exchanges all over the world that are CEXes. And then once the assets are in the system, you have the DEXes, which are trading the products being created in the system, which also cater to retail, but it's a different type of retail than the other ones. But overall, I think the exchange system is very necessary to the critical operation of this whole system, because if it weren't for exchanges, nothing would get in. And once it's in there, you wouldn't be able to do anything fun with it.
Yeah, I can't agree more there. I think like you rightfully explained, there are two functions to this. First is people moving to crypto, the decentralized money that is, and then for them to actually move this around, these different types of assets that you create on this decentralized rail. So that's where, because to answer to specifically to what Pablo is asking, I think centralized system will continue to remain as long as people want these bridge from traditional finance to decentralized finance, because there's absolutely no way you can take away that centralized bridge. But once they're in the system, I think now we have the technology to enable people to exchange value, uh, maintaining their sovereignty, because that's the most important word here. Because right now we are sacrificing the sovereignty, which is kind of the most crucial property of what crypto stands for, right? Or decentralized money stands for. It epitomizes your ownership over the asset. So if we are able to allow these retail users to hold on to this property and still exchange value without problem, I think that's the function that DEXes should serve. And we are still a long way away from getting that technology in full shape, I would say. So I still believe that in 5 to 10 years from now, the exchange operator, at least on the crypto to crypto side, has to be 100% completely non-custodial. I don't see any other way out of it, because we now have the technology and the systems to make it happen. So it's just a matter of improving the product and getting to that shape. So yes, that's I feel in 5 to 10 years, I don't think custody would be really necessary to give the kind of user experience that a crypto to crypto exchange needs to experience.
But do you think that, a Binance, a Coinbase, Kraken, you think that they're willing to give that up, that custody up in 5 years? I mean, it just doesn't seem,
I
I don't
think
know.
I think they may continue to see how do banks adopt, right? Any fintech institutions, they adopt into different verticals to serve the different needs of the customers. So it's not like everything is just going to go down or anything like that. They will adapt to
Mm-hmm.
the changing needs of the consumer. So I'm pretty sure that all these centralized exchanges have created the infrastructure to make that change if necessary in the future. They're already on the preparing themselves for that. So it's not that they see that everything is going to remain the same way as it is 5 to 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very fast changing industry. Technology is changing, you know, in fact, improving and getting better. So things will definitely change. It's just that it will be a different offering, they'll have at some point. That's all. Yeah. Mike, you want to?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier, I kind of view CEXes and DEXes operating two different spaces. The CEXes are the on-ramps that allows people in the developing world to get their capital into crypto. DEXes are kind of like the playgrounds. Like once the capital's in, now what else can you do? How do you earn additional yield? How do you make bets that are interesting in those things? So to me, DEXes are really competing with other DEXes.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah, that's a
Interesting.
nice way to put it. Yeah.
So in that scenario, Mike, you say DEXs are competing with other DEXs. In some cases, DEXs are competing with CEXes as well. What in that scenario, what can DEXs do to attract liquidity?
Right. Great question. So I think what I've seen is a lot of DEXs have taken like short term, like they focus on short term ways to attract liquidity, like like incentive pools, liquidity mining, and so forth. But what I think long term, I think about like competition, strategically. So to me, I think DEXs, number one, I think you want to be the top DEX in your network. Right, so it's kind of like because if you're on Polkadot or on Celo or on Ethereum, Arbitrum, all these places, like your first goal is I think to be the top, the most liquid, and the highest volume exchange within your network. And then once you have that, then I think you want to compete with other DEXs and other networks. But a lot of time, I would say number one is you're almost time betting on the success of your underlying network itself. So to me, I think the success route for someone like a Polkadex is really to because you guys are making a bet on the Polkadot ecosystem, which I think is a great bet. And I think once you're top in Polkadot, and at that point, then you're able to kind of compete effectively with other ecosystems. But and I say this because I would say I think what you want as a DEX is to be the primary listing venue for new issuers in your network. So, for example, any new Polkadot token, you want them to maximize liquidity on Polkadex, because at that point now you become the NYC, so to speak, of your network.
Yeah, that's the goal, right, Vivek?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. Yes, I think that's what we're trying also, Mike. I think we need to make sure that we are very easy to list, easy to get exposure to, to all the tokens in the Polkadot ecosystem, and then slowly look at others as we expand. So just to add a couple of points there in terms of how this is going to shape or how the DEXs still need to evolve. I think most of the work right now, at least from our side, is going towards how to properly gamify different aspects of this DEX, right? Because a DEX means it has to be decentralized, it has to operate on its own. So there has to be incentives for people to automate many of these processes. So nobody has really properly gamified this, right? We have gamified the market making in Uniswap based on the bonding curve. So similar inventions need to happen to actually gamify the Orderbook, or the larger how when these DEXs evolve, it still hasn't hit that proper the balance of most of these smaller functions of a DEX becomes completely automated, and there's enough incentive for someone to not take advantage of it, but at the same time it reaches kind of an equilibrium, like kind of a Nash equilibrium, where everybody has an equilibrium to which the kind of profit they can take it, and not and cheat the system. So that is still happening right now. It's still not perfected, but I think it will happen, is what we firmly believe.
So yeah, I think you guys have been talking about open source, and then we've also been talking about DEXs. When we're saying decentralizing finance, we also have to decentralize the way decisions are made, right? We just recently listed Fala, and that was our first governance-led, or we say democratic, I'd say more governance-led listing of a token on Polkadex, and that's for us is the latest in our kind of decentralization journey. Hummingbot, I would say, is a little bit more advanced. It's fully open source, right? How important is democratizing advanced financial tools that were only previously accessible to traditional finance institutions? Yeah.
I'm glad you touched on the governance piece, because I think that's actually a really important aspect of doing this correctly, and honestly one that we've been learning and trying to figure out how to get right over the past couple of years. Because when we first launched, it was basically a spin-off. We basically had a for-profit company earlier, and then we basically created an open source foundation and just essentially gave away tokens to our community and the previous company's investors, as really for governance. So it was not an ICO or anything. It was just for governance. But we discovered actually that there's a tension between kind of like allowing people to change anything versus allowing actual like the decisions to be made in a way that's going to be conducive and helpful for everyone who's using the product. So for example, just one thing we did early on was every pull request to our code base had to be voted on. But that caused a lot of voting, a lot of like, a lot of I would say like a lot of work and effort by everyone that didn't really actually lead to a lot of value for the people using Hummingbot. So over time, we've progressed the system, and today the way the system works is that our voting system, we only do it once a quarter to limit the time that our users need to spend. And what they can decide is essentially which exchanges should be included in the code base and the level of support and maintenance that we can allocate to each exchange. So for example, one of the reasons I'm here today is because our community voted for Polkadex as one of the top exchanges, the top DEXes that we should support. And so that's why we're going to be doing a new user guide bounty for Polkadex that should be coming out in the next month, and those like that. So it's kind of like, I would say, because what we discovered is unless there's some type of voting, Hummingbot kind of becomes like a tragedy of the commons, where you have lots of open source connectors to exchanges, but you're not sure if any of them really work, and there's no coordination in terms of how the scarce maintenance bandwidth is allocated across all of the exchanges and code base. And unfortunately, that's actually a situation that I think some of our peers, like other open source code bases like CCXT, are today, where they support a lot of exchanges, but it's really not clear, which ones actually truly work well. And it's also like the team there, I think, has not had time to really flesh out the strategy framework because they're spent, just playing whack-a-mole with exchange bug fixes. So for us, I think the exchange kind of voting system has been crucial to allow us to actually allocate time towards stuff which actually helps users, like developing our V2 strategy framework, as opposed to fixing bugs on exchange connectors. And instead, it allows us to create this bounty system that offloads that maintenance work to the community.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to learn from Hummingbot Foundation and other foundations which are operating right now on governance, because we are still relatively new in terms of governance. We just started, delegating most of these things with the community and based on democracy voting. So we need to strike a balance and learn a lot from. I think we're still looking at how you operate this, Mike. To be honest, like how the foundations work in general, because there's also this problem of bandwidth, right? You have a ton of issues to vote on, and that can actually create too much in terms of too much time needs to be dedicated for the available developers, and so this is something that we need to work on. And now that talking about governance itself, it is extremely important for building something like what we are building, especially on the fintech space, which is on the gray area of finance, right? So that's another reason why we are still utilizing the Polkadot's OpenGov to make sure that we become more resilient in the long run, to be able to position ourselves in a way which is more open to regulators. So the more decentralized it is, I think it will be easier to innovate, and I think it's much more easier to convince the regulators about how we run it as a community. And so I think governance plays a huge role, I think, especially in innovating in the space, not only to improve the product, but from the exchange side, from a regulatory perspective as well. Yeah.
I think that governance, what I've learned, is it's one of the most important things for a decentralized organization, because and I would say that this is one aspect where I think we should actually, we're still trying to improve, because it's really hard to be transparent kind of explain things and put the time into doing that when there's so many other things that you need to do from an engineering and product standpoint. But I think, I think the more you can do that, I think that the better it is in the long run for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think we're all trying to do that. Governments, everybody's trying to get better at governance, right? It's a never-ending effort, I would say. But yeah, it's interesting to see how all these, now with DeFi and governance itself, how everybody's trying to figure out different problems, and they're all tailored to the product itself or the project itself. So one thing may not work in the same way, for everybody. Okay, so let's get into the main reason why we're here, which is what should traders be looking forward to thanks to Polkadex Orderbook's Hummingbot integration. I mean, what aspect of the integration are you guys most excited about as well?
Maybe take that first. So now that Hummingbot is integrated Hummingbot, what that means is that any strategy that works on any other exchange Hummingbot will also now work on Polkadex. So right now, for example, our flagship strategy has always been market making strategies. Like we have one called pure market making, and which allows you to basically set set a strategy that maintains orders on an exchange, and then lots of parameters that help you essentially move those orders around as the market moves. Use market data to configure that. But basically, it's like the full power that any market maker would have, you too can do as an individual. For instance, there's another strategy called cross-exchange market making, where you can kind of like basically provide liquidity to Polkadex, but then use the Binance or the KuCoin order book as like the reference point, and also hedge on those other exchanges if you get filled on Polkadex. And this is kind of like this is the classic market making strategy where you're basically taking advantage of higher liquidity and arbitraging essentially the lower liquidity. So I think that those are two kind of like simple strategies. But also I would actually encourage everyone in the audience to think of Hummingbot not as like just a tool you run, but more like a framework that helps you build the types of bots that you want to run. So Hummingbot is really, it's almost like React. It's basically a framework that has lots of different components. Now, for instance, like we have like candles that allow you to reference and pull like historical data from a certain market. You can like adjust your spreads based on a technical indicator dynamically. You can like reference two different indicators and create like a different indicator and use that. You can automate like stop loss and take profit and a bunch of other stuff. So it's kind of like I think of it as like a box of Legos. It's like now that you have this access to Legos, it makes you more powerful, and you have to be kind of technical, but you don't need to be a developer to actually build the types of trading strategies that professional market makers are out there using.
Yeah, thanks to the integration, I think whatever we see right now on the Polkadex Orderbook, both our market makers right now, the integrated ones, they're actually using Hummingbot. So thanks to what we have, and I've tried it out myself for testing, by the way. Works great, to be honest, but yes, there are still some work to be done on the back end in terms of latency and stuff. We are working on it, and I think in due course with the silver, position and the Hummingbot code base, I think we'll get support from you guys as well, probably, to improve that. I personally myself, I've logged some issues on the connector side. So I think in due course, I think it should be really, really robust, and it will become a great tool for the traders out there.
Vivek, you mentioned that you've been trying out yourself Hummingbot on Polkadex. I wanted to end with, asking both of you, do you still do any trading? And if so, what do you trade? And most importantly, where? What exchange? What platform?
Yeah. So I still run Hummingbot a lot, mostly for demo purposes because it takes even running a bot because you have to kind of monitor it, understand how it behaves. It takes a lot of time and effort. We actually started monthly trading competitions at Hummingbot, so I've been running a bot every month, participating in those competitions, and yeah. So I'm actually not a very good trader. I tend to lose a little money every time, but we have some people in our audience, our community, who are very good, who can basically make money every single time during these competitions. But it is like a time and effort kind of thing. But in terms of where I trade, I actually typically run bots on Kraken, and that's mainly because I'm in the U.S. and Kraken is one of the few exchanges with lower fees that are available to U.S. residents.
Yeah, that's interesting, Mike. Yeah, so for me personally, I stopped trading many years ago. In fact, I'm a very bad trader as well. I've tried different bots and everything I've mentioned to you already, right? So, and I didn't really feel like, I'm not cut out for being a trader because I feel it's kind of boring, if you are full time into it. So, but I think it is renewed interest, I really wanted to learn how our systems work. So now I, started trying to test the Hummingbot. So besides academic interest, I don't do any trading.
Well, I don't know if he's in the audience, but Francis, our community manager, is a big trader, so we'll have to get him hooked up on the bot and see what he makes of it.
If I knew that earlier, he would have been given probably the Hummingbot documentation we just wrote out recently, right? So yeah, good to know that.
Yeah, for those of you listening, Vivek made a guide for integrating Hummingbot into Polkadex. If you're interested in adding your own trading bot, and I think the one you made is specific to the market making strategy, right, Vivek?
Yeah, that's right. But that's a very basic document. But like Mike said, it's a vast ocean of data, right? You really have to learn this. There's so many strategies you can deploy, even Python scripts you can write yourself. But even then, otherwise, there are some strategies that ships with the product, which you just have to modify. You don't have to have any prior programming experience to do that, as Mike said. So it's a great tool. If you're really a trader, I think it's a great tool to start and take some advantage. Right now, I think there's a lot of arbitrage opportunity with the exchange and the centralized exchanges. Right now, as I speak, I think there are more traders who come in and exploit that and create a better pricing for these tokens. Yeah.
So if I'm a trader on Polkadex and I want to automate my trading or implement automated strategies, what do I do? What's my first step?
Yeah, happy to explain. So I think I would say it kind of depends on you just want to get started. The easiest thing you do is just install Hummingbot using Docker and just run like a sample script that just just pulls the order book and looks at it and pulls the order book. So we have a bunch of sample scripts that do very basic things, like see the order book, execute 3 trades, run a very simple market making strategy. So I would actually start there just to understand what is a bot. So I tend to encourage people to think of bots. It's just a very simple program. And so if you understand the very simple programs, it should give you the confidence to run the more complex programs, which are like the strategies. So I would say, I think, if you wanted to, you could just dive in and start running the pure market making strategy right away. But where I would start, it just be kind of to be honest, I would actually start by installing the software and running the basic scripts in the scripts demo folder, just to understand what a bot is. And then after that, I would start running the strategies. If you really want to get into it, we just came out with something called the V2 strategy framework, which is a more it's a more sophisticated way to build like advanced strategies without writing code. So you can do things like, basically pull historical data, basically pull real time, like basically create a window of data. We call it candle, from any connector that Hummingbot uses, and then use that to like set your spreads and shift your price dynamically. And you can also do backtesting, because we have this like backtest engine now that kind of like allows you to download historical data from the exchange and then also use that data to test one of these V2 strategies. So if you guys are like really want to get into it, I'd start there. But I would start just by running a very basic script to understand how Hummingbot works. And if I may actually give a final shout out, because the Hummingbot is kind of complex to succeed with, we basically started a school to teach people how to do this. It's a paid program aimed at people who really want to do market making, but we think it's a valuable program if you are getting serious about algo trading or market making.
Interesting. That's awesome. Yeah, you guys heard it. If you're interested in that, check it out. What's the program called, Michael?
It's called Bot Camp. You can find it on the Hummingbot website. Yeah, it's fairly new. We've only done a couple of months so far of it, but it seems to be a hit, and we're actually going to add AI to it because we're going to add AI into Hummingbot. Next year. We're kind of working on it now, mainly to make it easier for people to use Hummingbot, add an AI assistant. But we also kind of want to teach AI in the course, because we think that just learning how people can incorporate like large language models into their daily things, it'd be valuable. And I think we can show how we're doing Hummingbot. I think will help a lot of people. So overall, with Bot Camp, we to be honest, it's more like a passion project for my CTO and I. But we really want to teach people kind of like both market making bots, but also all the new technologies that are coming out today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the AI side sounds really cool. I mean, I'm guessing I can just kind of tell, the model what I want my strategy to be, and it can make it for me.
Yeah, that's a dream. That's a dream. But sorry, if you guys are interested in that, we actually just published a video on our YouTube, along with a GitHub repo that shows you how to basically basically set up a pipeline that uses the documentation of Hummingbot to answer questions about the bot. So it's on YouTube right now, but it's fairly technical. But if you're interested in basically how to actually use AI in your daily engineering workflow, I would actually highly recommend that, because we've discovered is it's kind of like using it in action in production there's actually quite a lot of nuance in getting it right. So I don't think we're anywhere close to launching AI assistant, but I think we want to start conducting research along with everyone else.
That's awesome. All right, guys. So I think this is it. I mean, do you have any closing thoughts?
I think before we close, just want to thank Mike for supporting us from the very beginning, before we were even releasing the product. So thank you so much for that, and just continue to do great work. And maybe just one last question, just throwing out of the blue for you. Where do you see the foundation heading towards in terms of and maybe like on 2-3 years from now?
Yeah. Great question. So I think for me, we've always had two goals for the foundation. Number one is to achieve economic sustainability. So because of we have fee share agreements with exchanges, we have sponsorships coming out. I think we're actually very close to actually being able to say we'll never need to sell our token. Instead, we're making money directly from exchanges and from users, and that allows us to sustain Hummingbot into the future. And the second goal is to achieve what I call decentralization from a governance standpoint, which means that everyone should be replaceable, including me. I think I would say some open source projects have this concept of benevolent dictator for life, Guido and Python and Linus and Linux. But to me, I think that's actually the opposite of what we want from Hummingbot, which is basically a setup where like this is owned by the people. People will continue maintaining this project into the future. When if I'm not here, if Fade's not here, this thing still operates. So I would say I think we're getting close to that point, but hopefully we can achieve that in the next couple of years.
Amazing stuff. Thanks, Mike. Yep, that's all from my side. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, my closing out from my side, I would say I want to thank everyone, especially the Polkadex team, because I think we're very much aligned in terms of like the value we see out of crypto, which is the ability to democratize access and allow anyone in the world to achieve financial freedom, wherever they are. And so for me, and I say this because that's actually what made a big difference in my life. Like the fact that my parents were able to leave China, it kind of allowed me to have the opportunities I had. And so I think my life is always like, how do I, work with people like the Polkadex team and others who can help achieve that vision?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's definitely aligned with what we're aiming for sure.
And thanks everyone for joining as well. We intend to keep this PolkaChats going, along with every listening and as frequently as possible as Pablo piece. Okay, so let's make it informative and try to invite people like Mike who can add a lot of value to these conversations. So, thank you.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mike, for joining. And get hands on with Hummingbot on Polkadex Orderbook, everyone.